What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are once again going to be discussing some Detroit Lions defense. What may be the most important stat for the Detroit Lions and how they can improve it in 2020 with the moves they made this offseason. Let's get it started. But before we get into the video, let's go check out the comment of the video. And this one is a question. It says, what is your favorite NFL player? Hashtag whiteboard worthy. I love this. Favorite NFL player of all time. Okay, now this one's cool because this isn't the best player of all time. This is your personal favorite. And if it's hard to choose, I know because it's going to be hard for me as well. But just choose your favorite player, whoever it is. Even if no one's ever even heard of the guy, put it in the comment section below. I don't know, maybe you guys are related to an NFL player or something like that. Put it in the comment section below. Very interested to see who your guys' favorite NFL player is. Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. This one I think is going to be pretty entertaining because there's a lot of numbers, a lot of odds, a lot of stats. And I also just think the reasoning behind it is kind of an interesting theory. It's kind of an interesting to look at because there's so many questions with 2020's defense for the Detroit Lions, and there's still so many questions about last year's defense. I mean, heck, when the Lions were asked what the heck was wrong with the team in 2019, they even said usually you can pinpoint a few things. They feel like they can't even pinpoint what it is. Now, maybe they feel like, hey, actually, we do know what the problem was, and hopefully that is the case, and obviously we'll see that on the field if they did know what it was. Hopefully they fixed it this offseason. 19's defense had so many question marks, and that means 2020's defense has even more question marks because now you've changed things. So we have so many things, just different things to talk about, just different things to look at, different theories, strategies, things like that. And I would say about a month ago, I made a video talking about how third down conversion percentage is possibly the most important stat in the NFL. And the reason I say that is because most stats always fluctuate, right? Most stats are never that consistent. You can win in so many different ways. You can win games by being the best rushing team. You can win games by being the best passing team. You can win games by being the best rushing defense, the best passing defense, the best special teams. You can win games in multiple different ways. But one stat that usually stays pretty darn consistent in the NFL is third down conversion rate. The reason this stays so consistent is because third downs are always something that appears no matter what you do. Whether you pass, you run, whatever you're doing offensively or defensively, third downs always are going to come up. Third downs can make or break a game. Third downs for an offense can be huge to keep the drive alive. Third downs for a defense can be huge to get an offense off the field, especially in certain scenarios. It is also worth the most estimated points on average, more than first down and second down. So third down is a very, very important down. And usually, not always, but usually third down conversion percentage will tell you which teams are playoff contenders, which teams are better than others, because for the most part, every year in the playoffs, if you look at that stat, you can usually see which teams are probably a little bit better. Now, there always are some outliers, and, it's never going to be 100%, but for the most part, this stat is usually pretty darn consistent. So while we will be touching on that a little bit again today, we're also going to be diving a little bit deeper in how the Lions can get that to improve in 2020. So while we may say, hey, yeah, this is a problem, we got to talk about how we're going to fix it, because you got to fix the problem, right? The problem can be there, but if you don't know how to fix the problem, that's not very good. So we're also going to be discussing that in today's video. We've also did this with passing, talked about how important, passing attempt yards and things like that. So there's tons of different stats to look at. I mean, this isn't the only one you can look at. I just think this is a very good one to start with. And to put it in perspective how important this stat is, what if I told you that you could make a case the Lions had a better defense in 2019 than 2018? You would definitely call me crazy, right? You'd be like, no way. I mean, if you just look at the stats, you're absolutely crazy. And I would say, yeah, you're right. But what if you look a little bit deeper? Because third down conversion percentage is so important. Why was that 2018 defense great? Why was that 2018 defense so much better statistically? I mean, heck, in 2018, the Lions finished 10th in yards allowed, 8th in passing yards allowed, and 10th in rushing yards allowed. Top 10 in all three categories. And then all of a sudden in 2019, you're the worst passing defense, one of the worst rushing defense, you're worst in yards allowed. What the heck happened, right? How did this go from top 10 to one of the worst in the league? Third down conversion rate really did play a big factor, and here's why. See, in 2018, the Detroit Lions were on the field defensively less than any other team in the NFL. Only 942 defensive snaps taken. 942. But in 2019, the Lions defensively were on the field more than anybody else in the league. 1,108 snaps defensively. Oh, snap. How did that happen? I don't know, but it completely flipped, right? So that stat completely flipped, and that caused those numbers to be a little bit skewed. Not necessarily that they are right, it just caused it to be skewed because the third down conversion percentage can play such a big factor. Now, sure, turnovers, things like that play big factors as well. Sacks. The example I used before, if you have 2,000 rushing yards, but you rush the ball 2,000 times, that doesn't necessarily mean you're running well or running efficiently or effectively. It just means you just keep doing it, right? It may not be working, but you just keep doing it, so eventually those numbers are going to start to look better. 2018, the Lions allowed 4.4 4.4 yards per carry. 0.3 yards more allowed than 2019, where they only allowed 4.1. Okay, so hold up. They were actually worse in rush defense. Well, how about passing? In 2018, we're 29th in passer rating allowed, 102.7. 102.7 as a team. Meanwhile, in 2019, the Lions weren't that good, but they did only allow a 99.6 passer rating, which is better. Look at completion percentage. In 2018, the Detroit Lions allowed a 65% completion percentage. 65%. For 2019, the Lions only allowed a 62.4% completion percentage. Again, you can see it's better. 48 passes defended in 2018, 73 passes defended in 2019. So those are just a few numbers. So I'm not necessarily saying that, hey, 2019 was a better defense, because the third down percentage is something that the defense has control over. An offense, it can keep a drive alive. For a defense, and get the defense off of the field. That can mean points, right? Points are obviously huge. That's the name of the game in football. They allowed a 37.1% third down conversion rate, which was 11th best in the league. 37.1. Not the best, but it was 11th, which is pretty darn good. However, in 2019, they allowed a 43.9% conversion rate, which was 28th in the league. For the most part, the Lions defensively were actually better in 2019, but one major factor is that the Lions defense was on the field a ton more in 2019 because they just couldn't find a way to get off the field. The Lions could not get off the field on third downs, and if your opponent is converting almost half of the third downs, that's not very good. You're not getting off the field. Offenses keep the drive alive. That starts to rack up plays. And then all of a sudden you're giving up points. In a bend don't break defense, right? In a bend don't break, which Patricia talks about all the time. If you can't get off the field, you're breaking, right? If you cannot get off the field, your defense is breaking. And that's what happened in 2019. 2018, it was bend don't break. They weren't breaking, right? They were getting all these averages, but they weren't breaking in the end. However, in 2019, they were. Look at last year's playoff, right? In last year's playoffs, obviously, there was 12 teams in the playoffs. This year is going to be 14. That's cool. Last year, there was 12 teams that would make the playoffs. Out of those 12 teams, eight of those teams had a positive third down conversion percentage rate. You converted more of the third down and you gave up. So, for example, last season, the Detroit Lions converted 40.4% of their third downs on offense. However, they allowed 43.9%. So that's negative, right? So the Lions obviously weren't a playoff team. But 8 of the teams that had a positive were in the playoffs. Only 3 of the teams that had a negative made the playoffs, which goes out to about 73%. Now you're probably thinking, well, hold up, that's 12, that's 11, that's not right math. Well, one of the teams, which is actually the Bills, they had the exact same, which is kind of weird, but they had the exact same. Ty goes the runner. Okay, we'll make it 9. Based on last year's stats, I have a 73% chance to make the playoffs if I have a positive third down conversion rate. Look at the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl last year, the 49ers. They had a 12% positive difference in third down percentage. And you look at the Chiefs, a 10.5% positive difference in third down percentage. Those teams had a huge gap, right? They were getting off the field and they were keeping drives alive. The Lions were able to keep the drives alive, but they could not stop anybody on third downs last season. I would definitely be looking for as a goal. Okay, that's cool. You know, that's great. We've talked about this. But how in the world are the Lions going to improve that? How I think there were so many locker room problems, there were so many factors, which we're going to get into some of those factors here. But we talked about how big of a problem 2019 was. We also discussed that the Detroit Lions passed the defense, which was their worst thing statistically. They were actually not too bad against the run. As a whole, the Lions were not too bad against the run. We're the 8th best team in the NFL in yards per carry allowed. They were not bad against the run. They held guys like Ezekiel Elliott in check, Saquon Barkley. They were pretty good against the run, but against the pass, they were completely atrocious. Kind of tail off to pass rush, because this has been a huge question. Everybody's talking about, okay, where are the Lions pass rush going to come from? Where's it going to come from? Now, we've done videos on it, so I'm not necessarily going to say where it's going to come from, but instead, what I'm going to tell you guys here is how the Detroit Lions weren't bringing this pass rush early in the season, yet the defense was working. So what the heck happened? Because something had to happen. For example, look at these stats. In the first 4 games of the 2019 NFL season, the Detroit Lions only rushed 3 players 33% of the times defensively. 33% of the times. That is well above the league average. I mean, it's not even close to the league average. 33% of defensive snaps, the Detroit Lions only brought 3 players defensively in their first 4 games. The lowest in the NFL in blitz percentage. The Lions were not blitzing in their first 4 games. So the Lions weren't blitzing, all right? They weren't bringing more than 3 guys. They were bringing 3 guys a third of the time. Yet somehow this pass defense was actually pretty good. 55.9% completion percentage, which was 3rd in the NFL, and they were top 5 in opponent passer rating allowed. The Lions pass defense was good. I told you guys before this, and I don't know if everybody, really believes me, but the Lions pass defense was good early all of a sudden it just completely fell off. It was like, what in the world just happened to our pass defense? I don't know what happened. And then for the rest of the season, it just went downhill. Well, I came up with a few reasons that happened last season, okay? I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking about third down rate, and I'm looking at, how teams get off the field on third down. Some teams had the strategy of blitzing, some teams had the strategy of dropping 8 and bringing 3, which is basically Matt Patricia's philosophy. And by the way, that has not changed since he's been in Detroit. If you go back to 2017 when he was with New England, he didn't blitz that much either. He also brought 3 players on, I think it was 21% of snaps defensively, which was by far the most in the NFL. And they were successful defensively. There were a few problems last season because while it showed last year through the first 4 games, I know no one wants to just talk about the first 4 games. It's a full season. I get that. But we have to understand that it did work. We have to understand at one point what he was doing was successful. So something had to happen. If it was never successful, now we're concerned because it's like, okay, Matt, I don't know if I can even trust that you know what you're doing. But he's already shown that, hey, it does work. It does work defensively. We held Patrick Mahomes to no touchdowns. All right, we held the Chargers to 10 points. We were ranking really well against the pass defensively, and we did well against the run out throughout the entire year. And obviously, we were competitive early in the year. Right, we came out to a 2-0-1 start on the season. And yes, our offense was playing great, and our defense could have been better, but it was still we were playing well enough to win. And I also want to point this out there: Matt Patricia is our head coach, not our defensive coordinator. All right, Matt Patricia has control over the entire team. Our defense coordinator is now Corey Unlin. Sure, yes, he is a defensive-minded head coach, but his job is to win football games. That is the end of the story. That's his job. Yes, it's important that he has a good defense because that helps you win football games. But if the Lions are winning football games in general, that's his job as a head coach, to put a team on the field to win football games. Put his team in position to win games and let the players do the rest. So he just needs to win football games. That is his job. Down a couple of reasons I think the Detroit Lions defense really fell off. Okay, this is kind of just my hypothesis. So we've talked about it before. I think the Quinn Diggs trade was huge. And here's how I'm kind of looking at this. Week 5 against the Minnesota Vikings, Quinn Diggs comes back. The Lions defense is terrible. Definitely the worst week they had. And it was like, oh snap, 42 points allowed. And all of a sudden after that game against Minnesota, things went downhill for Detroit. I mean, they never recovered after that game. Well, right after that game, the Detroit Lions also traded away their safety in Quinn Diggs. And the Lions didn't have older veterans in that safety group. They had Taylor Wilson, and that was basically it. It's because they traded away Quinn Diggs, they said, hey, Tracy, you're going to have to take over a big role. Yeah, Will Harris, rookie, you're going to have to play a pretty big role because we play a lot of 3 safety sets. So all of a sudden, the Lions trade away Quinn Diggs, and they're asking these young safeties to take over a huge role in the secondary. I'm not going to go into necessarily why I think they trade away Diggs, but to keep it professional, not go into what he said or anything like that, because I have no idea what went on in the locker room, to just say what he did on the field, he was not playing his best football early in the season. He was not. Quinn Diggs was off to a very slow start. He had like 20 tackles and 5 missed tackles. He was off to a very slow start with the Detroit Lions defensively. So Lions trade him. Let's just keep it to the business side. Not going to worry about what the heck they said in the locker room. All we know is that he said that they were trying to control voices. So I'm sure something was said. But just on the field, he wasn't playing his best. So the Lions made a business decision. They traded him away. And all of a sudden, like I said before, that started a domino effect. Now you have an unhappy Darius Slay. Darius Slay was your leader defensively last year. Look across the board. You traded away Quinn Diggs. Who is your leader on that defense? All right? It's either new guys or it's young guys. All right? You have these young guys in the safety group. You have basically no veteran linebackers. Your cornerback, your veteran cornerback is Darius Slay. The rest of your cornerbacks were Sean Melvin, a guy that we had to throw in that position because we were basically forced to. Justin Coleman was a new face in the locker room. Amani Oruwariye was a rookie. Defensive line, Trey Flowers was your new face. But a lot of young guys, a lot of new pieces. We didn't necessarily have any leaders after that, and Darius Slay was that guy defensively, the guy that a lot of people looked up to. And all of a sudden, Darius Slay's unhappy, right? Darius Slay was not happy. He voiced his displeasure after the season, so we know he wasn't happy. This isn't just guessing. We know he was not happy. And all of a sudden, Darius Slay, we know, gets traded at the end of the season, which, some people aren't happy about. And Darius Slay basically says that, he didn't like Matt Patricia or whatnot. We're not going to get into all of that. But again, keeping it business related, Darius Slay did not play that well last season. No, I don't think he played as bad as some people think he did. If you look at the numbers, he does still compare to some of the better cornerbacks last season, but he didn't have his best season. I mean, let's just keep it honest. Did he not? Not only did he not have his best season, he was also on pace to get paid. So Matt Patricia, in my mind, challenged him. Matt Patricia said, hey, you're going to get paid. If we're going to keep you around, you're 29 years old, all right? We're going to have to give you a big contract. We know that. So we need you to go prove yourself, okay? Don't worry about anything else. Go prove yourself. And yes, I understand it's hard when there's not a lot of pressure. By Pro Football Focus, they ranked him as the 83rd best cornerback in the league. The 83rd. And sure, other players in the league were like, oh, that's wrong and things like that. Darius Slay didn't play that well last season. So Darius Slay didn't play that well. He was set to get an extension, and the Lions traded him away. Keeping it business related, the Lions had to look at last year and say, hey, you know what? He didn't play that well. And I understand there were some problems, but he didn't. And you know who did play that well? Amani. Amani graded out way higher than Slade did. Now you may be saying, okay, well, hey, he didn't play as many games as Slade did. I completely get that. He didn't play against the same players. But to keep it in mind, I mean, Darius Slay, he did not have his best season. So Lions trade away Darius Slay. But even during the season, he's unhappy. So now you don't really have a vocal leader in there. You have a mad Slay. You have Snacks Harrison, right? Snacks Harrison, you trade for him in 2018. Your defense gets way better. Your rushing defense gets a ton better. And all of a sudden, this guy wants to skip these workouts in the offseason. He heads into 2019. You know, this man just got paid. He just got his extension. And he's terrible. Snacks Harrison is just awful the whole season. He's ranked as the 65th best defensive tackle in the league when just going from basically the best run stopper to the 65th. There's only 32 teams, all right? So if you look at that, Snacks Harrison was really, really bad last season. He knows he was bad. He talked about it after games. Hey, I played like really bad this year. And then all of a sudden we know the drama came out after the season. We're not even going to talk about that. But he missed these meetings, right? He just got paid. He's hype. But he doesn't play well. He plays completely awful. Some people are saying, hey, this guy looks like he's completely out of shape. But he never played well the entire season. So all of a sudden, we don't have a run stopper. We don't have that we don't have that interior run stopper, which is basically the glue that holds together Matt Patricia's defense because he has these big bodies. And if this guy in 2018 that you saw play really well, you just gave him an extension, and now he's just one of the worst in the league, you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? So you have a Snacks who's not playing that well. He's emotional, not happy. Not to mention the rest of your defensive line just continues to get injured. Oh, you signed Mike Daniels. He could step in. Nope, Mike Daniels barely plays the entire season. Mike Daniels deals with injuries throughout the season. Your entire defensive line is dealing with injuries. Certain lines are placing all these guys on IR, which I think a lot of it was just because of the end of the season. I mean, this season was basically over, so they were just kind of placing players on IR. Then, halfway through the season, week 8, to make matters worse, you lose your one leader left on the team, which is on offense, not even on defense. On offense, Matthew Stafford goes down. The confidence is so low. That's like, what the heck is going on here? You have little vets on the team, which was a huge emphasis of the Detroit Lions this offseason. They brought in a ton of vets this offseason, and that was a good thing. But you don't have many vets. You got the vets that you do have aren't happy, and then you have Matthew Stafford who was injured, and all of a sudden things are just falling apart, and people are like, well, hey, Matt Patricia needs to make them believe that they can win. And I don't think the Detroit Lions ever lost confidence they could win. They just couldn't close out a game. And I think that also ties to third down conversions. The Lions couldn't get off the field when they needed to, and they could not close out a football game. You didn't have your quarterback in Matthew Stafford to go win a football game like that was usually the case when Jim Caldwell was there in 2016. He couldn't go win a game at the end. So you didn't have your quarterback. You had no veterans on defense. You had a linebacker in Jared Davis who was trying to play coverage but literally cannot cover in coverage. That's not what he's for. That's not what he's drafted for. And he's thrown into that role because that's who the Lions have at linebacker. Or Jelani Tavai, who's a rookie who, yes, they didn't do that bad in coverage, but he's also a rookie. That's what your linebacker group is. It's like you have no veterans at the safety position. You're asking all these young guys to step up and play well at the safety position. You don't even have a reliable number 2. You don't have a number 2 cornerback that you can say, hey, you know what? Take that guy away so I can blitz. Because you can't blitz because you don't know that your cornerback can play well. Darius Slay's unhappy. And then on the other side, you have a guy that you don't even know if he can step up into that role because he was basically forced into it because Tease didn't step up because no one took over that role from him. You have Justin Coleman, who's on a downside, who's just completely lost confidence for the year. And then you have this young guy, Amani, who steps in and grades out as the best corner. That just should show you how bad. It's great for Amani, but it should show you how bad these cornerbacks and safeties were playing. Because yes, while the Lions weren't getting pressure and that makes it hard for these guys, Amani wasn't getting some crazy pressure when he was there, but yeah, he was grading out well as a rookie. He stepped into this. He's like, hey, this is my opportunity to shine, and he shined. Because I think for Amani, there was nothing there. Amani was not looking at this saying, hey, I gotta get paid to play football because that's what I was drafted for. This is my opportunity to shine. And he shined the brightest, and that was great for Amani because with all these crazy things going out, he was one of the bright spots, just like Jelani Tavai, to shine in this defense and make a name for himself to be a role player for the future or potentially a starter down the road for the Lions defense because he stepped up when they needed him the most, when everything was dull. And I think that's what the Lions did this offseason, right? You have these big rookies stepping in the roles. Yes, it's going to be really hard to step in these roles. We've heard it before. I'm not saying this. This is what we've heard about how the Patriots do things. The Patriots treat everybody the same. The Patriots want guys, and I bring up Patriots because Matt Patricia used to be there. Clearly, he's bringing the same type of philosophy to his team. He says it's his way, but it's clearly similar.
Guys up there in free agency. You know, you got to get guys that got a little bit of that robot mold in you to play in that system. There's a lot of thinking. There's a lot of rules to adhere to on a play-by-play basis. And then, of course, Matt Patricia just ain't going to kiss anybody. That's not the way things are done in New England. And, you know, it's hard for star players, especially who weren't used to it. Listen, we saw Michael Strahan, who we know is like one of the nicest humans on earth. He was part of a Giants culture where, hey, you're the man, Michael Strahan. It doesn't matter. All of a sudden, Tom Coughlin comes in with that, you know, Belichick, Bill Parcells cracked the whip and things are tough around here. And he didn't like it, right? So then he saw the results. To your point, we got to get better results there in Detroit to where I think more and more players will buy in. And, I think that with the influx of Patriot players, I think that will help Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia.
Patriots treat everybody the same way, right? It's a business. This is a business. We're going to go play football. That's what we're going to do, okay? I'm going to critique you on everything. I'm not a player's coach. That's why we went out and got Corey Unlin. He's a player's coach offensively. Matt Patricia doesn't seem too much like a player's coach. Matt Patricia's out there to win football games, okay? And I know he hasn't done it yet, but this was an absolute mess last season. And we're saying, hey, it's Matt Patricia's fault. This is Matt Patricia's fault right here. What is he supposed to do? Matt Patricia go out there and play football for him? At some point, this guy's going to step up. So what did the Lions do this offseason? They said, you know what? Anybody that didn't step up last year, we're going to move them. We're going to find replacements. Rashawn, hey, we appreciate what you did. You stepped into a big role. You probably shouldn't have been there, but we appreciate you, but, we're not going to bring you back. Darius Slay, hey, you had problems. We're going to move you, okay? You didn't play very well last season. Amani, you shine. You're going to stay, obviously, and that's what they kind of did throughout the defense. Hey, we need a linebacker that can cover because Jared Davis doesn't look like he knows where he's going. He's running into players. We got to get a veterans. And they brought in veterans at every single position defensively. Veterans at D-line. You got Nick Williams, who's coming off his best year. Nick Williams finally proved himself. Now he gets a deal. Now he's got to go prove himself again. A lot of 2-year deals. Keep that in mind. Desmond Trufant on a 2-year deal. Nick Williams a 2-year deal. Deron Harmon didn't get a big deal. He just got traded. He's got 1 year. A lot of these guys have to still prove themselves, and obviously every rookie has to prove themselves. That is going to be huge for next season. And what's really going to help on third downs is your Jamie Collins. Is your guys in coverage. You having 2 reliable cornerbacks and more in the back end that you potentially, if you wanted to, you can blitz, because last season you didn't have that option, if you ask me. I don't think Matt Patricia necessarily had the option to say, hey, let's go blitz, because when we did blitz, things went wrong. Things went really bad. And by the way, what Devontae Adams said about, hey, the Lions never disguise anything, I watched the tape and I found it. Doesn't happen a lot, but I did find the Lions did disguise a few times when they showed man and then they would drop in the zone. Just a few times. And I actually watched Bill Belichick talk about doing that, and he said it's really hard to make the decision to disguise things because usually players are starting off out of position and they have to get back to their spot. And if you have young guys and guys that can't do that role and they're not veteran players that are used to doing that, which the Lions didn't have last season, guys they can rely upon, it's really hard to disguise a lot of things because you can't rely upon those guys getting back to their position. Matt Patricia last season couldn't rely upon, didn't have the ability to blitz, didn't have the guys that could disguise tons of things. Matt Patricia was basically just trying to get through the year, and in the first 4 weeks we saw it work, but it just kind of all crumbling down, and then Matthew Stafford gets injured, and at that point it's just like, okay, this season is just a wash. And this offseason, obviously the Miami's made a huge turnover defensively. So yes, I know they're former Patriots, but it's going to be huge. I'm sorry for the rant. I'm sweating. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.